Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Ron from the Box and One podcast. Thanks for joining us for another episode. Today, we're joined by Blue Jays writer Andrew Stoeten to talk all things Blue Jays. Hope you enjoyed this one, and as always, make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Box and One Pod, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Box and One. I'm Azam Faruqi with my co-host Ron Salgado, Pramit Bose. Hey guys.
How's it going?
So we have a very special guest here today with us, Andrew Stoeten. For those of you who follow the Blue Jays, would know him very well. A writer. Right now he is on Substack. Subscribe. Some really interesting stuff. I saw. The one you wrote today was pretty interesting about Picard projections and the lineup. So thank you for coming on, Andrew.
Oh, anytime. Thanks for having me, guys.
So let's start off with the big one, right? George Springer, Blue Jays signing him for 6 years, $150 million. How big of a free agent signing is this? If we look at all the historical off seasons, like the only one to me comes to mind is maybe Roger Clemens, but is this the biggest free agent signing?
I think so. I mean, people would probably rightly point to Russell Martin, which obviously that's a Canadian guy, and they really leaned on that, I think. What I think is really encouraging and exciting about the George Springer signing is the fact that, obviously a lot of teams are sort of pulling in financially this year. The Yankees weren't out there. The Red Sox weren't out there. The Cubs weren't out there. Spending big on players. And the Jays could have, and I think in other eras of Rogers' ownership would have probably followed a similar pattern. And the fact that they took the opportunity to really to see that the market was to their advantage, that they weren't, in that situation, I think that is such a huge statement beyond just like the money that they paid Springer. I think it's really encouraging if you're a Blue Jays fan to see them do that, even though, in other circumstances, they probably wouldn't have been able to get him because there probably would have been a better market for him. And the Blue Jays still clearly aren't the team that, free agents, big free agents, elite free agents are going to gravitate towards. But part of what makes them, what makes any team a team that free agents will gravitate towards is just being good, right? I mean, that's what the Blue Jays were like in the early 90s. They signed Ricky Henderson, they signed Jack Morris, they signed Dave Stewart as free agents. It's not like they're incapable of it. It's not like there's something essential about the Toronto market that makes them, it a turnoff for people, even though there's a laundry list of things that every Canadian Blue Jays fan is aware of that it's supposed to be why they can't attract free agents. But when it comes down to it, it's all about money. And when the Blue Jays are acting like the big market team that they should be, it's a really great thing. So, yeah, I think Clemens, AJ Burnett is the other big one probably as well.
Yes, there were the BJ Ryan, AJ Burnett offseason. They've made a lot of splashes in the past decade trade-wise, like the Marlins deal, Josh Donaldson, R.A. Dickey. They obviously had extended some of their, the Bautista extension from 2010, the Vernon Wells extension. But yeah, this could, other than Clemens, this is probably, I would argue, the second biggest, just in terms of what he's already accomplished and what he's expected to bring. Like, Russell Martin was a great signing, but I don't think anybody expected this guy, Russell Martin, to be like an MVP candidate, like a top 5-10 player in the AL. And
by the time the 2015 playoffs, he probably wasn't a top 5 player on that team. Right?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at all the free agents that they signed, late 80s, early 90s during those runs, a lot of Hall of Fame players, but most of them were probably towards the end of the career. Like, this is the guy we're talking about who's 31 years old, right? So in terms of what you can get for the next 3-4 years at least, hopefully, could be something pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's there's no way to make it not exciting, I think, if you're a Blue Jays fan. And also back then, just free agency worked differently. Guys were getting to free agency later. It wasn't necessarily the same. Thing.
What does this actually mean in the grand scheme of things? I guess just looking at it from Azam and Premet are more hardcore guys, but me, I'm a little bit more of a casual baseball fan. Been following since I was a kid. But,
no, you just like the Marlins. Just admit it. You're a Marlins fan.
Yeah, I am a Marlins fan. So yeah, that full disclosure there. But I mean, just from I still have my team in the AL. I'm in Toronto, so I do love the Jays. But from a casual perspective, like, is this a team that we really should be getting excited about?
Oh, I think absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't, it's weird, right? Cause I'm so in the baseball hive that it's like, but I also like George Springer is not a name that is a household name but there's not a lot of baseball players since Derek Jeter retired that are household names. Right. So, and that's just sort of the nature of the sport. It's not the NBA when there's 5 guys on the court at the time. It's, there's just a wealth of players who are all talented and, quantified to various levels, I guess. But yeah, no, I think it's absolutely an exciting time to be a Blue Jays fan. You're maybe a little early, maybe a year early, but I think it's time to really get on that bandwagon. Well, it looks like they're going to be good.
To add more excitement, Fangraphs has released their projected records for the season, and they have the Jays in a 162-game season winning 89 games.
That's pretty good.
Better than Picado, actually.
Quite a bit, I think.
86 games, right?
Yeah, the only teams ahead of them are the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Padres, the Mets, the Braves.
So when did the 86 pace around last year? I mean, it's a small sample size, so you really don't know what to make of it. But
yeah, 533. Right? Yeah, it would have been about there. I don't know if last year's team would have held up at that high. Like I think that's the way that they got in, which is fine. Like they managed to the situation they're in, like really going bullpen heavy, pulling starters earlier in games, having these 4-inning starts, and you can get away with that in a short season because it's really you're in the playoff race from opening day. That's obviously over 162 game season doesn't translate well. They just did not have the rotation, and that's still a question mark if you had to pick one coming into this year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, going into last year, I had them high 70s in the wins column.
Which I think I was writing about today. I think that the Vegas had them at like 75.5 last year, which which made total sense. And I think you're right. Last year they had like 2 or 3 weeks where they were amazing, and it was like, whoa, this team's actually really good. And then the Yankees stomped them, and it kind of got iffy for them making the playoffs for a bit. And it's like, right, that stuff gets evened out a lot in 162 games, whereas in the 60-game season, it just it looks different. And yeah, it was, and also the playoffs were expanded. Like they wouldn't have made the playoffs under the current format last year. But there's still, there's a lot of talent there, and it's, the Rays took a step back. They got rid of Blake Snell. They lost Charlie Morton, which I think is huge for the Blue Jays. Yeah, it'll be a really, really interesting season. It's certainly not, for all the optimism, it's certainly not like, oh, they're just going to waltz their way into the playoffs. But there's a lot of reasons to watch, and this is the first time in quite a lot of years, I think, 3 or 4 years when that's been the case, right?
Yeah, and I think just to add is, exciting. It's great. Obviously, you're still depending on a lot of the young core taking a step forward. Like, Bo, Biggio, Vlad, especially, like these guys, a lot of what it's not like these guys, the core of their team still hasn't reached their ceiling yet. And there's always a little bit of that uncertainty when you have a really, really young core. Will everybody hit their ceiling? Like, remember 10 years ago, JP Arencibia, Brett Laurie, Colby Rasmus.
And Brett Wallace was in the minors.
Who was?
Brett Wallace.
Oh, yeah.
Those big hips, yeah.
How many? Yeah. Brett Laurie was a top 10 prospect. Baseball America top 10 guy, and Keith Law had him 6th or 7th.
The year that he came up, I think 2011, like the cameo that he was crazy. Yeah. I remember flying to New York, like after that, in that fall, and wearing a Blue Jays hat, and like the guy at customs being like, being kind of like a scumbag going through customs, like, oh shit, you never know what's going on. And the guy's just like, I got that Brett Lawrie kid, like looking at my hat and just starts chatting me up about Brett Lawrie. I'm like, oh, well, this is going great. This is amazing. But like, he was like terrified of what Brett Lawrie was going to be for the Blue Jays, and it did not, as I recall, go that well from there. But yeah, there was a time when that was. But I think this is a different level of prospect, really. Like,
yeah,
I think Brett Lawrie wasn't getting like 80 hit tool, 80 power kind of grades from like serious scouting people who, that's their job, and they'll be embarrassed if Vlad doesn't come close to that. And it's one of those things where like, yeah, there's risk about all those guys, but it's also like, man, if Vlad puts together a year that looks like what we thought he was going to be, then oh my goodness, like the Blue Jays are going to be that much better this year.
Yeah.
If that gets unlocked. And
this is a player development org. That's what Shapiro and Atkins do best, are known for from their Cleveland days, right? So they're well set up to reach their potential, I would say. And very intriguing and very encouraging rather to see Vlad on Instagram.
Yeah,
workouts on the weight loss. The most recent one, I sent it to Ron and Azam on our WhatsApp chat. Assumed like, oh my god, look, he actually like this is legit. This ain't like
when I first saw that, like almost a month after the playoffs, I'm like, yeah, losing all this 30-40 pounds in a month is very sustainable, right? But then you see him keep working at it, so like, okay, maybe there's something, right?
I wasn't buying it.
He wants to be a third baseman, so. I
wasn't buying that weight loss. Like I think I even said it that quickly in a month. I'm like, there's no way this guy's doing that. It must have been a camera trick, but no, I don't think it was.
The most recent one, that like he had like that really, really giant ass. It's like it's gone down there.
So how do you see the offense shaping up? So one of the issues you see is that there's a glut of outfielders, right? And then you still probably have one man short in the infield.
Yeah.
Do you still see Mayfield being a long-term third baseman or a utility option, or is that something that the Jays have recognized that he may have more value as a part of a trade package or something?
Biggio, you said?
Yes.
It's. I mean, I think fans have definitely recognized, or a lot of people have recognized, like. There for one, there's like the Keith Law, who was still kind of dismissive of him. I don't think he's maybe at the place where he was before, where like, oh, he doesn't deserve a roster spot, because he's had about a year's worth of plate appearances, like 700, and he's been really good. I think he obviously deserves to get a whole lot of reps and to keep let's see if he can keep doing what he's doing. I'm not sure that the deadened ball that they're going to try to use this year is going to be his friend, but yeah, I like there's a lot of that chatter among fans, but my sense is that the Blue Jays really like him, and they really obviously value like the leadership stuff and the intangible stuff, and I think that maybe will help allow him to keep his spot maybe a bit longer than fans would like, or would if he hits a slide, and he has before, right? I mean, I think he had a hot start when he first came up in 2019, and then was really bad until September, and then pulled his season out, and then he's had some ups and downs, and that's maybe what happens when you're a guy who just like walks 20% of the time, and then the rest of it is you hope a few fly balls go over the wall, and that's going to make the difference between whether you're having a great season or whether it looks like you're not.
So he balances out their other outfielders besides Springer.
Yeah, and he absolutely, I think that the Jays are going to give him a real chance, and more of a chance than sort of the chatter that among fans suggests, right? Like, I don't think they're ready to write him off or anything, but I think that obviously the utility role, the Zobrist kind of role, is what most people see as his sort of future, and ideally, they'll eventually, at the end of the year, middle of next year, you'll start seeing Austin Martin, you'll start seeing Jordan Grosjean start to force the issue, and then that maybe just sort of naturally bumps him out of the way a bit. But that means those guys have to get it done as well, and that's not easy, as we've seen. Like, Vlad was supposed to just hit the ground running, and it was not like that. And so you can't take, I think, for granted what Biggio has done. And he was just, he just looked competent compared to the Jonathan VRs and some of the guys we saw last year, right? Like he's out there playing smart baseball and not, he had his mistakes too, but just not making some of the like, oh my God, head in hands kind of plays that we saw a bit too often in the middle of last season.
Mm-hmm.
I think his upbringing has a lot to do with that. I mean, his father was really high IQ guy, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, and all that helps too, right? I mean,
yeah,
he got access to a lot of real good training at some point, and
Hall of Fame father. So it makes sense.
Can't hurt.
So the holes we're looking at this team is third base, starting pitching. How do you see them address this going forward?
Yeah, I don't, third base, I'm not sure. I think it's possible that they're done there. I really hope they're not done on the starting pitching front. I mean, I think that there are guys out there that make sense and that other teams are clearly not going to pay, that the Blue Jays can kind of just sit around and wait, and somebody's going to fall in their lap for a price that they like. The Odorizzi's, the James Paxtons, the Taiwan Walkers. From what I understand, Walker really liked it here. I know he said that publicly. I've had somebody who knows him, who's DM'd me on Twitter and is like, no, but he really does really like it here and really wants to come back. And I don't know, you get that sense, and hopefully that's something that can happen again. I mean, I wrote about this last week or over the weekend, like that there's risks with all of these guys. But there's risks with every pitcher. Like, that's just sort of the nature of it. And I think that's sort of where the Blue Jays are at too. Like, they're, if you can get a guy on a 1-year deal who has some upside, the red flags don't seem so bad when you're not having to sign them for 3-4 years. So I think that's sort of where they seem to be. Like, they're, the talk of Odorizzi might want a multi-year deal and might have some teams that are willing to give it to him. So maybe that's not a guy they look at, because they're also looking at next season's free agency, which is going to be a huge bonanza, I think. So yeah, I think that they have to do something there. I mean, I think their rotation as it stands is not good enough. It could be okay, but just one more legit starter would make such a huge difference.
It's tough. Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
Right now, they have Hunt and Ryu. And then you have Pearson. You still don't know. He's still young, right?
Yeah.
And he may not be able to pitch 200 innings. But then you have a bunch of guys who look like 1s and 2s, but probably pitch like 4 and 5s.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like your Robbie Rays. Like, if he strikes out a side, he looks pretty spectacular doing it. It's just like 7 walks around that, right?
He's not a fun guy to watch, unfortunately. Nor is Tara Rourke, and I'm not real confident about Steven Matz either. Like, it would be nice to have a real guy there. And Pearson, like you say, like, he's young, he's got all the tools, but who knows what's going to happen there. Hopefully it's going to work out well, but
the narrative is always Pete Walker. Pete Walker can get them right. Like, well, poor Pete Walker. Like, he's how many guys does he have to fix? And like, Jesus, leave the guy alone. It's true, and I don't think it's just Matt Bushman is a big part of that too, and they're very into the technology, the pitch design. They're trying to be their own driveline kind of a situation there, and more power to them for trying to do that. But yeah, it's I don't think it's ever going to be a quick fix where it's like, oh, take your broken guy and give him to the Blue Jays. Everybody seems to really like Pete Walker, and I've been on Zoom calls with him. I don't know him, but he seems like a really cool guy, affable guy. Easy to understand what he's talking about. Like, I can see why people like him, but I don't know if the track record is there of him like turning garbage into gold, right? Like, I don't know. I don't know that the reputation is necessarily all that warranted, though. Not to disparage him, but it's just like, yeah, and you're right. I think that they're relying a bit on, Pete Walker's going to make Robbie Ray great. Pete Walker's going to figure out how to make Steven Matz better. Didn't really work for Tanner Roark or Chase Anderson last year, but I guess we're not talking about that. Good point. I mean, what I always find it intriguing, like when Gibbons was let go, and they bring in a new coaching staff when somebody from the previous staff survives the turnover. It's okay. Then it's okay. The front office sees something in that individual. Like, obviously, from afar, I think the best job Walker did was the 2016 team, where they had the best rotation and one of the best pens in the league, and they were good. I don't think anybody expected them to be as good as they were, but they were good at. So it could just be give Walker a bunch of guys that will stay healthy, and that's all you need, and he can get the most out of them.
That makes sense. I mean, I don't know if these guys are going to stay healthy.
Yeah.
Also, I think he was on Farrell's staff too. Like, I think it's like 3 coaching staffs he's survived.
Yeah, he was on the. I think he was the bullpen coach in one of those.
He was the bullpen coach. Yes, he was.
That's got to be unheard of, where somebody survives that much turnover, isn't it?
It's rare. It's not unheard of. Is maybe too much, but it's really rare. Yeah, and I think that speaks to just how valued he is and how much people really like. He's and it's changed. I mean, Farrell was what, 2010, or like it so much has changed, the way that they use the Rapsodos and work in the spin rate stuff, and it's the whole nature of the job has changed, and he's adapted along with it. And I think
he's the new Don.
Farrell was 11 and 12, right?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're right.
He might have been in the minors for a while, like coaching in their system for a while as well, right?
He, I don't know. I mean, I remember him he was a reliever for the Jays in the mid 2000s, and I don't know if he went to Japan for a bit after that. He bounced around a bit, but then I think he was in the system for a little bit and before sort of working his way up the chain.
Yeah, I just said he's the new Don Cooper.
Right,
18 years, survived like 4 managers, maybe 5.
It's I don't know, why get rid of him at this point. I mean,
so. A lot of pitchers have already been traded. We've seen like Darvish getting traded, a whole bunch of others. Mm-hmm. The one thing I'm really thankful of is that did not sign Trevor Bauer. I did not be in a position where I don't want to support this team once every 5th day. Mm-hmm. So no matter what happened, I'm glad that didn't go through. But I haven't really heard a lot about this, but you keep writing. You've written about and tweeted about this quite a bit. David Price.
Right.
Or do you see that there's a possibility?
And that's just me trying to will it into existence. Really. I don't think there's anything to that.
Okay.
Just that it's a guy the Dodgers don't need, who's making money they probably would rather save, and please let us take him off your hands and save you a problem. It was just, I mean, he's just such a guy the Blue Jays fans in particular love to cheer for, and we. Even if it worked out poorly, which it almost certainly would, I would love to see him back, right? But I don't think there's been any sort of rumblings about that, other than not just me, but Blue Jays fans in general being like, "Hey, look at that! That's a great idea."
That was rumored last year as well, right?
I think there was a little bit of talk about that as well. It's hard to separate, again, the same thing, like what's wish casting and what's like were there serious talks about it. I don't know. When John Morosi reports it, then I'll know. But please, the Darvish one hurt. As we bring that up, that because that was a guy that was, and that was a weird moment in the offseason, right, where it was like the Padres are having the offseason I wanted the Blue Jays to have, and it seems to have worked out well. But I mean, that Darvish was available. Still bugs me that they didn't find a way to go out and get him.
Yeah, and what I found interesting about that trade was, and I don't remember the names now, but it seemed like the cost of acquisition wasn't as high as you would have expected. Like, I don't think San Diego gave up any of their top 10 prospects.
No, I mean, that's a really good system. So their top, their 15 to 20 is maybe somebody else's 5 to 10, but like I don't know. I'd like Darvish so much that it wouldn't have bothered me if
we're not allowed to get you Darvish in Toronto. That's a rule.
Apparently,
it can't happen.
Oh God!
Since we also mentioned the third base situation, I know you mentioned this in one of your articles, but do you think that Vlad is going to get a legitimate chance to win that spot, or do you think he ends up at first or DH?
I can't see him winning it, but I think they have to. Like, we're talking about the job that he's done to get himself into shape. Like, they can't not let him try. Like, that was kind of like the carrot that they dangled in front of him, right? Like, oh, get it and then get into shape. You can be in the third base mix. Like, I don't think they will give him every day at bats there, unless he proves that he can like do it. But color me skeptical, I guess, on that. But like, yeah, but like, I think
guys, they love their multi-position players.
They do. I mean, I prefer it when they can play at least one of the multiple positions they're asked to do. But yeah, I think that he deserves to be in that mix. I think I wrote the other day, like, spring training, just run him out there, and like let him play his way out of it. Like, I think, and if he does, then that's what you tell him. Like, I think that's how you have to handle it. Like, don't kid him. But
if he doesn't get the job, who do you put there?
Gavin Biggio, I guess. Semien would be a great fit at third too, but then you have to have Biggio at second. And ideally, they have somebody else come in, right?
Yeah, I mean, Semien, I would prefer that. This is something Azam and I have talked about at length. I mean, for me, it's why bring in if you kind of got to a 1-year deal, like, put your best defender at the position he's best at. I understand the whole Biggio developing Biggio. You want to see if he can handle it long term. Sorry, no, Bichette. I'm sorry, yeah. But I mean, especially when your pitching staff or your rotation is just a little not settled yet. I think putting the best defensive team behind those starters who can get those extra, sometimes you need those extra couple of outs a night just to get your guys deep enough where you're not going to tax your pen.
No, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, what I would say is they haven't made, they've said that they're going to have Bichette play shortstop all year. They haven't done it yet. There could be a point where it's like, oh, if his defense is hurting them, Semien's right there. He's been an elite defender at shortstop before. I do understand, though, them wanting to say to Bichette, like, this is, you're our guy. This is your position. Like, it would be weird to. I understood with Lindor, as a possibility for earlier in the offseason, like, that's an elite defender. I know Semien has been really good. I don't think he's quite in that category. The numbers have kind of fluctuated a bit more on him. But he, I wouldn't rule it out. I would not think that, like, in August, if Bichette's had a bad year at shortstop, that he would still be playing there every day. Like, I think as much as they'll say right now that that's his spot, all bets are off when the playoffs.
It could be like when they flipped Russ Adams and Aaron Hill.
Exactly like that.
But I think that's what makes Semien signing so crucial, that you have insurance, right? So you're not going to have a full terrible year at short. Like, one way or the other, you will be fine. Because if Semien stays at second, that means Bo's been fine at short. And if not, then you have alternatives. Whereas if you had gone with someone like more offensive player, like, DJ LeMahieu, who seems like Bichette was really rooting for a lot of reasons. You can see why. But you may not have had that kind of insurance.
Yeah, or even just last year, like, how many games did Joe Panic or Jonathan Villar or Santiago Espinal play at short when Bichette was hurt? Mm-hmm. And it's like, you can't have that.
No, it was painful to watch some of those games.
Yeah.
So if they were to prioritize, okay, they go with pitching. Who else might be available in the trade market right now?
It feels like everything's getting down to the point where, the stuff's not going to happen too much. I mean, Sonny Gray, maybe. I was looking through teams' rosters and just looking for bad contracts the Jays could pick off just the other day. So there's Sonny Gray, there's Kyle Hendricks, the Marquez or Castillo are guys who, like, they would just take the prospect cost. I think is maybe too much at this point. Like, I think that the Blue Jays are definitely, like Shapiro said, like, they're cognizant of next year's free agent market. I don't think they want to take on too much excess money for next season. So, like, that's why I think that they're looking at 1-year deals with the Paxtons and the Walkers over that. Those are the ones. Those just make real sense to me, Paxton or Walker. Odorizzi, if he would take a 1-year deal too. But yeah, the trade market is I don't know. I haven't gone through with a fine-tooth comb. I don't know what every single team wants to do and where they're at, but it feels like that there's not a ton left there because it's kind of in mind. And so the free agent market is really where it is, and it's sort of a situation where the Blue Jays have played this well, and the music's going to stop, and everyone's going to have to grab a chair, and there's going to be somebody who doesn't have a job that the Jays can just be like, well, we'll take you for this price. And I assume that's what's going to happen. I think it would be disappointing if it didn't.
Mm-hmm. And of the remaining free agents, I mean, if I were to look at like my preference, I kind of like Walker more than Paxton, and for the fact that you might see him stay on the field a little bit more. Paxton is tantalizing because he can be much, much better, but provided he stays on the field for 20-odd starts at least. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I like David Price, but I don't think that's really like a thing, like I said. But yeah, I really like Walker. Walker was so good. We got such a good slice of him, especially results wise. Like if you look at his FIP, if you look at some of the underlying numbers of what he did last year with the Blue Jays, they were not as good as his like 1.30 ERA or whatever figure it was that he put up. Mm-hmm. Paxton though, like he scares me, and especially and I wrote about this a bit this week. Like Scott Boras was talking about, he's in the low to mid 90s like he was last year, and it's like, well, that's not really or where he was in 19, and that's not where he was. Like Paxton was a guy that until last year was averaging 95 or 95 plus on his fastball, and then you would look at you look at the game logs, you look at the pitch logs, and it's he was maxing out at 97, 98, 99, hit 100, and that does not sound like that's where he's been so far. And I've saw people talk about, well, it's early and they're ramping up and there's still more velocity to come, but to me it's like Scott Boras would be doing a terrible job if he wasn't like pointing that out himself, and he hasn't been. And I think that I would love for James Paxton to work and to be a guy that the Jays sign, and it works out great. But I am a little worried about that.
Yeah, I like if Odorizzi, if like a 1-year deal is something that he would settle for. Like who knows what if the market doesn't want to give him a multi-year deal. I like him also. Just he's done well in the AL East, so he's gone into those ballparks. He's had a reason. Like I don't have the numbers in front of me as to how he performed in each of those individual ballparks versus the Yankees or Boston, but he's gone through. Like it's just generally a tougher environment to pitch in the AL East because of like the Yankee and the wind tunnel and the dimensions of Fenway and even Rogers Center. If and when they come back, it's a bit of it inflates hitter stats. So.
You could definitely make the case, I think, for any of them, but maybe him easier. Like that 2020 was, there's risk on all these guys, but his 2020, he had a blister, he had a back problem, he got hit in the chest with a ball, he was terrible, but it looked like he found something in 2019, and that he was like a legitimate frontline-ish starter and was real good. And then it was just such a disaster. But like, you could convince me that. To ignore what happened in 2020 because of the injuries, just maybe better than you could convince me that what happened to Paxton because of the injuries was
I wonder if
something to forget.
Yeah, if a guy like Odorizzi would want to, like, I mean, just in terms of knock on wood, thinking that there will be more spending next offseason, just simply because the COVID situation is hopefully normalizes and owners are willing. Hopefully, knock on wood, and the owners are actually able. We now have revenues coming in, gate revenues and concession revenues, and owners are willing to start spending again. Not that they were spending to their capabilities before COVID, but it could just be a better market for a guy like him who's coming off a bad year. He may want the 1-year deal.
True, though. Hopefully, there's a season after next winter, right? With the CBA expiring, right? So that's another factor.
That's a good point too.
Yeah. Nobody wants to think about that just yet, but
what do you mean? The PA and the league work really well together.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's just talk a little bit about the rest of AL East. how how do you see Yankees and Tampa? Like, do you still feel that they're that much better than the Jays? Because if I look at the Yankees, yes, they're a great team, but if you look at the starting pitching, it's pretty iffy behind Garrett Cole.
It is. I mean, I think they'll hit so much still, and I like their pitching. I think there's so much. Getting Tyon was a huge coup for them. I think that could work out extremely well, and I hate it. But and they got Severino's going to come back in the middle of the year, and Corey Kluber, if he had signed with the Blue Jays, I would certainly be like, yeah, he's going to be great. This is there's risks there. You're absolutely right that the pitching looks iffy. But yeah, I think they have enough depth, enough of like a base of guys who could be really good that they'll be able to hang on all year, and then when it counts, they'll probably have some guys who will be real good for them in the playoffs. It's not the way I would like it to be, but I think that's the way that it is.
Their pen is deep enough to withstand that iffy pitching staff.
I think so too. Yeah, makes sense.
Here's a question. Sorry to change the subject again, but we didn't get to this. Teoscar, do you think we've seen him go on maybe a stretch of 5 weeks where he's just killing it, and then everybody thinks he's a world beater, and then he starts doing dumb things in the outfield and strikes out a ton and stops walking and just looks awful except for the odd home run. Do you think that his breakout was really just a hot stretch on a shortened season, or do you think something changed in him that you think, okay, maybe he may not be a silver slugger level hitter, but he could be a very, very good outfielder for us?
He could be a very, very good DH. Maybe he's better than an outfielder, but
we have a lot of those guys.
Yeah, there's a lot. You know what? He didn't bother me that much as an outfielder in right field this year or in 2020 as before. But you know what? I think it was like mid 2019. Really, like if you go back a calendar years where they're, go back 600 plate appearances where he's been real good. I think Gurriel is the same way. And it's not a lot of sample size to really believe in, but man, it looked good. And you're right that he was streaky and it was like sort of real hot streaks and then would fall back down to earth. But it seemed like he would eventually adjust and go bonkers with the bat again. Like it's hard to bet on him, but if you told me, oh, they're going to trade him for pitching, I'd be like, oh no, like you're going to give, like if they got rid of him, I'd be certain that he's going to break, the breakout's real and he's going to be great. Keeping him, I'm a little less certain, but there's nothing you can do but just see what happens this year, right? I mean, I think he's earned the right to do that, and I got to tell you, there was this guy Jose Bautista once who had a breakout year, and he was like a year away from free agency, and I was just real hard on the trade this guy bandwagon. Like this can't possibly last, and I don't want to be burned like that again because I still remember it. However many years later, more than a decade later, it's not fun to be wrong about something like that. So I'm pro Teoscar, and you know what? If it doesn't work out, we'll see. But yeah, ideally, there's enough variance among all these guys. Like I was saying earlier, like if Vlad is what we think Vlad can be, Teoscar doesn't have to be that guy. Or if Gurriel stays healthy and hits the way that he's kept hitting, that's the beauty of having a lineup that doesn't have 4 or 5 holes in it.
Yeah, and realistically, there's not a whole lot. Sorry, Ron. There's not a lot of depth. Okay, so there's a glute of outfielders, but there's not a lot of offensive depth, right? So you have Springer, you have Hernandez, and to an extent Gurriel. So if you trade him, who are you starting? Grichuk? I don't know if I'm a big fan of that. Fisher. What do you have there?
Yeah, there's no. I mean, Jonathan Davis. I like John Davis. I mean, I like more for his glove than his bat. I think Fisher is, never gonna be a fan favorite here. to put it mildly. But I understand some of the reasons why they like him and why they've kept him. But I also think that he is out of options and a very realistic candidate to not be on the team on opening day. But yeah, you're right. No, there isn't a ton of depth, and I think that's what I was writing today about. Marwan Gonzalez. There was that rumor Shidavidi was saying they're kicking the tires there. That's a guy who can play corner outfield spots, who can play in the infield. Maybe that, especially if you think that Teoscar or Kevin Biggio could cover for George Springer in center, because obviously Springer's not going to play 162 games. I don't know. You can make things work. The whole Grichuk situation is kind of interesting too. But there's a guy, but like they're not. That's another bat that doesn't look like you can't rely on him, and you can't really rely on any of them except Springer at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It will be interesting to see what they do, but I don't know. It's been good the last couple of years for Gurriel and Teoscar, and that's half the battle, I think. Right? Like you got to give them a chance and see what goes on there.
How difficult is it for teams to assess where players are at, given the small sample size from last year? Like you look at a guy like Marcus Semien, where he had a good 2019 and then started the year off really rough last year, then started to pick it up. But I'm sure there were a lot of teams that were kind of a little bit shy to make a deal on him, especially given COVID as well. But like the small sample size, so you don't really know where he's at.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think he was a guy who, coming into 2020 after the year that he had in 2019 was looking at getting a huge multi-year deal at the end of that year, and obviously he signed a 1 year deal with the Jays. It's really to help rebuild value. It's really a bet on himself because those first couple of weeks of the season, quote unquote season, were not great for him. I think thinking back to previous years, like Mark Shapiro has talked about. Needing sort of 3-4 years to really understand what a guy is as a big league hitter. And I think that was sort of partially that's sort of covered to excuse not going harder on the team that they had when it looked like guys were starting to come into their own. But I think there's something to that. Like those variations from year to year start to smooth out, and you sort of start to separate the big leaguers from the guys who are just, who are the Chris Colabellos of the world, I guess.
He had a pretty good run, man.
It was drug tainted, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He was what?
Yes, the next year he was.
Drug tainted.
Yeah. Well,
then he had the third highest BABIP of all time in 2015 or something.
It was something absurd. I remember just watching it all. It was like 460 for like half the year. It was ridiculous. But part of one of the greatest offensive teams I've ever seen. So kudos to him. But yeah, I think I think Shapiro's probably right. It's weird. A lot of people don't like anything that Shapiro reckons says ever, though people are coming around. But I think when you listen to them, you learn things. And I think that's probably smart to be like, you need 3 years, 4 years before you really know what a guy's going to be as a big league hitter. Mm-hmm. That's not enough. Sometimes that's not even enough, or guys can make adjustments. But yeah, and that's why, to base a year's worth, 600 plate appearances worth of Teoscar being great or Gurriel being great is a bit iffy. But that's why this is what this year is, which is probably a year before their championship window really opens, and that's being hopeful.
So I know we're coming up on time, but this is a good segue. I just want to talk a little bit about the Shapiro-Atkins front office. So like you said, they get a lot of hate for a whole bunch of stuff, right? One reason being that they came in, they fired Anthopoulos, like Shapiro. And I think it was you who wrote, if I'm not mistaken, but they've been pretty consistent. They've been what they always said that they were going to do, right? Like they haven't really deviated from course. They haven't gone off course, except the fact that when you listen to Ross Atkins, you always need to decipher. You've got to sit with a management consultant and decipher what he's saying. But beyond that, they've been pretty consistent on messaging, and they've followed through on that.
I think so. Yeah. I always have to be careful not to be too glowing about them, because there's definitely been bumps in the road and problems, and
sure,
the way that they were half pregnant for a couple of years, like the fact that they didn't really fully tear down after 2016, and That hurt them so much that
I
they
was 17.
yeah.
I understand them trying one because it's hard to sell to a fan base after going to the ALCS. All right, tear down, but yeah,
and then just to the value they lost on Estrada, Estrada and Happ just not being who they were, Bautista not being who he was, Donaldson getting hurt. There was so much lost value that it's kind of remarkable that they've got back to where they are so quickly. But yeah, I think in general, yeah, they've really people just did not for a very long time. A lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people didn't want to hear what they were saying. And I think if you were listening along the whole time, they really have sort of just been doing what they've said the whole time. They talk a lot about culture, and they're following through on what they, creating the culture that they want to create, and they're following through on just being the modern team that they want to be with the technology and with the application of analytics. And they got Charlie Montoyo, who is clearly very amenable to whatever the front office is telling him about how to construct the lineup or use the pitchers. And they've followed through on, we'll act like a big spending club, like a big market club when the time comes. And I think that, credit to them. I don't want to act like they're not just baseball executives or anything more than that. But yeah, I mean, I think that was always there. It was something that we complained about for years as fans, more so before Anthopoulos or at the start of that, where it was just like, you know what, if you spend to contend, it was a market that was just dying for the Blue Jays to sort of act like a bigger market team. And they came in and found a way to not just sort of fantasize about it, but okay, here's how we make the business case to the suits at Rogers, and we have guys in place who can talk the language of the boardroom and can make the business case to make this a bigger thing. They were kind of nudged along by the fact that the MLB eliminated them from revenue sharing. They changed it to a market size based formula. Previously, it was based on revenues, and so the Blue Jays, Paul Beeson, I quoted in a piece the other week. So then when he got back to the team, when he'd left, they'd never even thought about revenue sharing. And when they got back, they were one of the biggest recipients. And then the league was like, no, we're going to base it on households in your TV market. And it's like, oh my goodness, the Blue Jays have 27 million. They're never going to be a team that receives revenue sharing. So they sort of had to behave differently. But credit to them, like I say, that they were able to do it. They've got Edward Rogers on board, I think is probably a bigger thing than people realize sometimes. I think I don't want to say that he's pulling the strings or anything, but I think that his voice probably has a lot of sway in the boardroom given the last name and the fact that he wants to be that kind of a that he's involved in the operation, that he wants to be that kind of owner. I think that where it's still a little bit of a rich guy's toy, and it doesn't want to raise the banner for the most wins per dollar. He wants to actually win a little bit, I think. And I think it's just they seem like they're in real good shape and in really good hands at the moment. And that all could change very, very quickly, I'm sure. but
it tends to happen in this town.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just asking, how do you think, Ed Rogers, you talking about his influence, obviously holding a lot in the boardroom, maybe. How much of MLSE's success do you think may have played a part? Or did it?
I think that they definitely saw the real estate that Maple Leaf Square is, and have realized that's the way that modern sports teams need to go, and that's why they're trying to build a new ballpark and build in a bunch of real estate around there so that they can make revenue off office tower. Maybe there's not ever going to be office towers anymore because we're all going to work from home from now on, but condos and retail and whatever, and turn that into what the Braves have, and turn that into what the Rays are trying to build, and what Maple Leaf Square already is. I think that they've definitely seen that there's a path to success with what MLSE is doing for sure, and are probably trying to implement it there. And I think you're right that's probably it's probably that more than Ed Rogers' benevolence that is driving where they're going.
Well, they own a piece of They own a piece of that team too. And who would have thought 10 years ago, LSD is the way to run it, or it is the way
It's so weird. It's so weird. Yeah.
Every team they have, except for the Leafs, have won a championship since the acquisition. It's crazy. Yeah, and I think Ed Rogers needs to get. So I'm at Raptors opening night, the night they raise the banner and hand out the championship rings, and ownership is there. I kid you not. When they're introducing the names, Larry Tannenbaum gets cheered, George Cope gets cheered, Edward Rogers gets booed. This guy has a PR problem. Like even the Bell guy got cheered, and this guy booed hard.
It's not George Bell. I mean, the other George Bell they probably would cheer, but I mean, the statue. Come on, like you're asking for
made some innocuous remarks in the past as well, right?
I think it's just cool. I mean, people dislike Bell, but I think it's cooler to dislike Rogers, I guess. Who knows?
How many people know who George Cope is?
He's got the last name. It's just having the Rogers last name automatically makes you a villain.
Yeah. But we'll see. So that's why he's got to fix that PR problem by raising a championship trophy with the Blue Jays. Let's do it. Come on, Eddie.
Yeah, we'll raise a banner in Dunedin, Florida.
That hasn't been decided yet, right? They haven't decided where they're playing yet.
No, but they don't really seem optimistic, at least about starting the season in Toronto. I mean, Shapiro was basically like the Raptors. Nothing's changed since the Raptors were told no, so we're not even asking. Is basically where they're at. So
yeah, so it looks like nothing official, but with the Dunedin team going to a half-season league, they can use that. I think the team would prefer to be in Dunedin. You have your brand new state-of-the-art facilities.
Yeah,
the Dunedin Stadium it has like major league standard lighting. I'm sure they spent a lot of money on that training facility down the 8 miles away. I'm sure they love their players using that in mornings of games and on off days. So it makes a lot of sense, I think, on a lot of levels.
It's a very COVID-free area too, so that works out, right?
Yeah. Well, it turns out there's not a lot of COVID-free areas, but
yeah, seriously.
But yeah, and also by they spent that, you mean the taxpayers of Florida, I believe. But.
Yeah, but the vaccine, they're getting the vaccine though.
So that'd be nice.
Yeah, so I think that I don't want to. I suspect the plan is let's get to the All-Star break. See what the situation is, case-wise, at least maybe come back to Toronto. I mean, you're in an open roof. Players could have vaccines by then, even if there are no fans or a very limited number of fans in the summer, could be better. But yeah, I don't see any way they start the season here at all.
No. Yeah, no. But yeah, like you say, the new facility in Dunedin is huge for them. They seem to be very much in love with it, and who cares where the visiting teams are going to have to work out? I mean, it seems like it'll be a good advantage for the Jays, even though, like you say, it's 8 miles away or 8 kilometers or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah, I don't think it's not that. It's not that big. Also, we made the trip. It's not that long a drive, and if the facility is that good, nobody's going to care. We've seen I'm sure you've seen the video. It looks amazing.
Oh yeah. And no, I've done the drive too, and it's not that bad.
Yeah.
All right, I think this is a good note to end our conversation. Andrew, thank you so much. Any last words for our fans out there?
Well, I hope I have more words after the podcast ends, but I feel like you're walking me off the plank. No. Just thanks so much, and anytime, guys. Happy to chat Blue Jays with you guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. For
awesome. Thank you so much. And
thanks,
you want to plug in your blog?
Oh yeah. I guess it is a blog. I mean, it's called The Bat Flip is Stoeten, my last name at .substack.com. Sign up, you can get into your email news box, your email box every day or whatever. I write things. It's really a blog disguised as a newsletter, so I like to think about it. But just going to be there all year and hopefully for many more years, writing about all things Blue Jays with this tiny little nightmare that we're all a part of.
No, and I can attest. I mean, I've been reading your stuff for a number of years, and I've always found it very, very helpful and insightful. So, hope to see you continue writing in the future as well. And we hope you back sometime in the future as well. So, we'd love to chat again with you. This is the second time you and I chatted for my other podcast.
That's true. Yeah. But yeah, anytime, guys. I really appreciate it. It was fun.
Cool.
So that's it from us this week, guys. Next week, once again, we're going to do a baseball theme. So please look out for our episode next week as well. In the we're talking about the Negro Leagues baseball this week. So we're going to have someone from the Negro Leagues Museum next week. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of African Americans in baseball and the Negro Leagues as well. So please stay tuned and be safe, have fun, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for listening or watching.
Thank you.